Okay, I'm telling her it's 9:01. Let's start. So we'll see what happens.
Good morning. This is Teri Taylor. I'm with the Small Business Administration, and today we're going to talk about SBA's 8A Business Development Program. I'm going to share my screen here. Oh, the host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay.
We're having a little bit of a technical issue where we need to do I'm muted. I think we've got it, Marcia. Okay. Marcia, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen now. I think we're in business.
Good deal. I apologize for all that, folks. This is new to some of us old timers. But what we're going to talk about today is the SBA's 8A Business Development Program. And the question is your company ready to achieve the SBA's 8A program certification? You know, some of you are aware of what the program is, some of you aren't, but it's actually a 9-year business development program, and it's designed to help small disadvantaged businesses compete in the marketplace with the goal of strengthening their long-term viability. We attempt to provide business development support. We have a wonderful asset called the 7J Management and Technical Assistance Program that provides free training on everything from financials to contracting with the federal government to marketing your company. And the goal is to, prepare small disadvantaged firms for procurement and other business opportunities. And this program, the 8A program, resulted from the mergers of two distinct types of federal programs: those seeking to assist small businesses in general, and those seeking to assist racial and ethnic minorities. This merger, it first occurred in 1967 as a matter of executive branch practice. Then it was given a statutory basis in 1978. And so let's look at what the framework of an 8A candidate is. An 8A candidate must meet both the ownership and business requirements. And in a nutshell, the company needs to be 51% owned by a U.S. citizen that's socially disadvantaged, economically disadvantaged, and has total ownership and control over their business. Now, we are going to go into this in more detail. The business requirements are: it has to be a for-profit entity, small according to its size standard, and then the more strenuous aspect is demonstrate a potential for success. So let's go a little deeper into the owner requirements. Socially disadvantaged. What do we mean by socially disadvantaged? Socially disadvantaged individuals have been subjected to racial, ethnic prejudice, or cultural bias because of their identification as a member of certain groups without regard to their individual qualities. There is a presumption that certain groups are socially disadvantaged. This is a regulatory assumption. And so if you are a US citizen and a member of one of the following groups, you are presumed to be socially disadvantaged. That would be Black Americans, Asian Pacific Americans, Hispanic Americans, subcontinent Asian Americans, Native Americans. And in the Native Americans, we include both the federally and state recognized tribes. Now, say you don't belong to one of these groups and you believe that you are at a social disadvantage. We often see this with service disabled veterans or women-owned businesses in a male-dominated field, or even someone that was born with a debilitating handicap. So there is a way for someone that's not one of these groups to become 8A certified, but they need to make a case that they should be admitted to the program and demonstrate in that case that they are at a social disadvantage based on a preponderance of evidence. And in a nutshell, a preponderance of evidence is evidence of a quantity that leads the decision maker to objectively conclude that the existence or truth of the facts asserted is more probable than not. It's often hard for someone to go into the detail to make that case, but if you want to get certified with the 8A program and you don't belong to one of the presumed groups, you really need to put a lot of effort into explaining your situation. Now, economic disadvantage. The regulatory definition is individuals whose ability to compete in the free enterprise system has been impaired due to diminished capital and credit opportunities as compared to others in the same or similar line of business who are not socially disadvantaged. One good example of this is small disadvantaged business owners often have to use their personal credit cards and things to get debt, or just have a harder time. An SBA guaranteed loan might be evidence of this. So when we're looking at economic disadvantage, there is, another requirement that applies to the individual. And that means their adjusted personal net worth has to be below $750,000. So what do we mean by adjusted personal net worth? Well, you take your personal net worth and you subtract out your home equity. Basically, your entire resident goes off the books, because on a balance sheet, you have your asset side and your liability side. So, the mortgage is listed on your liability side, and the market value of your home is listed on the asset side. So that market value is subtracted off and your mortgage has already been subtracted out. You take your business equity, which is assets minus liabilities, totally out of there, and retirement funds. This says unavailable retirement funds. I need to correct that because there was recently a change and it's just retirement funds. So I think many of us can make that figure, especially out here in the Midwest. Now, your average 3-year income cannot exceed $350,000. Now, this is from all sources. So we take your total income for 3 years, add it up and divide it by 3, and it cannot exceed $350,000. And your total personal assets cannot exceed $6 million. So that's a parameter that's applied to everybody that applies to the program, and it's a mathematical equation essentially. Ownership and control. Now, this is very important when trying to get us certified for the 8A program. We want to see that the 51% socially disadvantaged is in total control of the business. They directly and unconditionally control that business. They're engaged in the daily management and operations of the business on a full-time basis. They hold the highest company positions, whether it be president, chief executive officer, managing partner, or managing member. They need to be the highest compensated individual. Now, there are exceptions to this. You are a small business and you need to hire someone with an advanced skill set, and it would be detrimental to your company to pay yourself more than this individual. Well, you submit the application and they'll come back and ask you why you're not the highest paid individual. And that's when you explain the situation that's unique to your company. For example, maybe you have to hire a geologist or an engineer or an architect and need them on a full-time basis, and you wouldn't have them unless you paid them the going rate. You are the one that needs to have the authority to hire and fire employees, set the company's policies, authority to commit the firm to contracts. It should be your signature on contracts. Predominantly, you need to be able to control the budget and financial disbursements and be of good character. Well, good character is hard to define, so it's easier to state what is not good character. And a lack of good character, it could be a history of criminal conduct. Now, don't let that get you excited. If you have ever been arrested or got into a little bit of trouble, you need to disclose that and explain why it happened and why it is not an ongoing history, that this was a one-time folly of your youth, or you were getting divorced and you were not doing well and got picked up while you were driving erratically. You can explain that situation. We're looking for an ongoing criminal history. Violations, of course, of SBA regulations. If you were to, not disclose your size properly or violate any of our regulations. And if you're debarred or suspended from performing on federal contracts, lack of business integrity, where you've pleaded guilty to something in civil court or you've been getting judgment, an ongoing history of that. We definitely do not want an incarcerated principal, because you have to be able to manage and control your business. And if you're in prison, you can't. Submission of false information on your application and failure to pay federal financial obligations. Now, it's very common for small businesses to have a little bit of trouble with their taxes, especially their payroll taxes. It happens to a lot of businesses. And what SBA is looking for in an instance where maybe you got behind, or you started out and you just didn't understand, how to calculate this and miscalculated and got in arrears. What they're looking for is a compromise agreement or a settlement where you're paying this debt off. If it's just outside an outstanding failure to pay on a federal obligation or student loan, then you need to rectify that before you apply. Because once it's settled and once a payment plan is in place, you're not demonstrating a failure. You have confronted the issue and are working on it. So let's move on to your business. The basic requirements are very simple. You got to be organized for profit. You need to be a small business as defined by your industry code. The company needs to be owned by a socially and economically disadvantaged individual or more. And the more, a little harder to meet is the company needs to demonstrate a potential for success. Potential for success, one of the basic rules on potential for success is that the business has been successfully performing in business for a minimum of 2 years. The 8A program is not for startup company. And your tax returns need to show 2 years revenue in your primary industry. You can't be jumping from janitorial to bricklaying to construction. You need to have, chosen your industry and been operating in that industry. Now, occasionally a business will be in business a year and a half or 18 months and they want to apply. And there are some opportunities for waiver, but I will tell you it's very hard to get a waiver on this. And this would be if you were, I don't want to say a captain of industry in that, but you have substantial business management experience and you have been managing a business for another company for some time, and you possess the technical experience to carry out the business plan for your company, and the business plan indicates a substantial likelihood for success. The company itself needs to have adequate capital to sustain operations and carry out that business plan, a record of successful performance on contracts in the industry in which you're operating, and demonstrate the ability to timely obtain personnel, facilities, equipment, and any other requirements to perform a contract as a participant. Typically, it's just easier to wait the 2 years. Other potential for success considerations are your access to credit and capital. It doesn't have to be perfect because, you are supposed to have an economic disadvantage, but that you can get enough money to perform work, or you have adequate resources. You need the technical and managerial experience, operating history in your primary industry. You've been successfully performing work. You possess all of the licensing that's necessary. Now, I want to clarify, it doesn't necessarily have to be the owner that has the license. The owner needs needs requisite licenses, but your staffing and other owners, all in all, you have all the licenses to perform the work in your industry. Now, there is another reason you can be denied, and that's if the government's simply not buying your services, your products or services. If there's no potential for marketing or doing business with the government, that's a potential denial. Being in the 8A program requires some maintenance and upkeep and some specific procedures. So, a company that the government's not going to buy their products or services, it would be a harm to them to certify them and require them to go through the maintenance procedures. Or the government purchases your products or service, but in sufficient quantities to support developmental needs of the applicant. Well, the federal government is a huge, huge customer. And so I will say that we very rarely see someone denied for these reasons. Now, that said, sliding into the 8A set-aside contractual benefit, which will give you a little better understanding why there could be a denial based on, for those reasons, is there is a contractual benefit. There is the potential to receive 8A sole source contracts or bid on competitive set-aside contracts. A set-aside contract is where the solicitation is set aside so that only a member of a particular group can bid on it. So it funnels the competition down to just those firms. And there are quite frequently 8A certified set-asides. And sole source is where the government, you have marketed your program to the government, you've established your performance history. And so the federal government says, we'd like Ace Acme Machine to do this job for us. And so, you can receive sole source contracts up to $4.5 million for goods and services. Now, if you're a manufacturer, you can receive a sole source contract up to $7 million. And as I noted, competitive contracts, the competition is restricted to 8A firms for set-aside requirements above these amounts. If any contract for goods and services is 4.51 million, it's got to be competed. If it's $7,001,001, it has to be competed. Now, if you're in the construction industry, there is an issue with any type of sole source or competitive requirement. Construction requirements to keep the cost of construction down, they are geographically restricted to firms who have bona fide business offices within the geographical limitations. Now, if you were in the construction industry and were certified in Kansas, you would be restricted, you know, of course, to all of Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Colorado, and Nebraska. And if you wanted to operate outside of those areas, you would need to move and apply for a bona fide business office outside of those areas. Now, I do want to clarify, it is not a contracting program, it's a business development program. The focus is on business development services. And, you know, one form of business development is operating on a contract, but it is not a contract program. If you get certified, any receipt of federal contracts is in no way guaranteed, and the onus is on you. It's up to you. It does support small disadvantaged firms with the management and technical assistance, especially through our 7J program, to help them compete with contracts and other business opportunities. And we also will refer you to other resources to assist you, such as the small business development centers. You know, when some one-on-one assistance is needed, that they have the capability and the expertise in that. The small business development centers are partners with SBA. So here you are, you've been certified and you want to go for contracts. It's not just a case of you get approached and you get a contract. There are some procurement procedures that you need to be aware of, but really it's the contracting officers and your business opportunity specialists that have to ensure that these procedures take place, but you do need to be aware of them. In the federal government, we have a simplified acquisition threshold, and that's any purchase between $3,000 and $250,000. Now, all those are automatically set aside for small business, but they can be narrowed down to a sole source offer for an 8A company. Well, in that case, there's no offering or acceptance by the SBA, but before the buying activity awards that purchase to you, they have to contact your business opportunity specialist to request an eligibility statement. And an eligibility statement is made on if you are in compliance with your program terms. So we would get an email from them saying we have a purchase order for $150,000, and Acme appears to be the company that we would like to purchase this from. Are they eligible for an 8A award? And our email response happily would most likely be yes. Acme's great. They are eligible for award. They are in compliance with their 8A BD program requirements. Well, when you get to sole source, the process changes entirely, and that's anything over 250 to the 4.5 or the 7 million, depending on, you know, what they're purchasing. And in an instance of a sole source, the buying activity prepares an offering letter referencing the firm. There's quite a bit of information they have to include in the offering letter, and there are often reasons we cannot accept them that have nothing to do with the 8A company, because there are a lot of regulations involving the sole source offers. Well, they'll send this to the business opportunity specialist, who within 5 days needs to provide them a a response either accepting or declining the offer on behalf of the 8A. Then we get to competitive. Well, an offering and acceptance is required, but it's not done on behalf of a individual firm. It's an acceptance into the program for competition purposes. So, we have 5 days to respond to those, and the buying activity will solicit it, and then they will contact the business opportunity specialist for the apparent successful offerer. That may not be in the same area. They could be anywhere, but once they contact her, they do similar to the simplified in that they request an eligibility determination prior to the award. Now, I want to talk about fiscal year 2020 contracting activity and the place of performance in Kansas. Now, this money that was involved is not necessarily new contracts. This is total federal spend where the performance took place in Kansas, and it includes existing contracts that may be on an option year or something like that. And you can see over 28 billion for all federal contracting activity. That's a big number, but it was over 28 billion, but 42 million of that was 8A set aside, almost 43. As you see, it's very close to hitting 43 million. Of that 43 million or 42 million, 33 million of that involved sole source awards, and 9 million of it involved competitive requirements. And as I said, this income does not necessarily encompass brand new contracts. It includes existing contracts. So what about our vendors that are located in Kansas that are involved in the federal marketplace? So this work here, this income here went to vendors in Kansas, but the place of performance could have been anywhere. And it's up to 30 billion for all contract activity. That includes woman-owned, it includes HubZone, 8A, small, large. And one thing we need to remember when we're looking at this is that Kansas is the air capital, Wichita is the air capital. So we have Textron, we have other entities that, aircraft that are involved in the aircraft industry. So we've got 30 billion going to vendors located in Kansas. But we do have the aircraft industry. But when you go down to 8A set aside contracts, our 8A vendors in the state of Kansas have done 35 million in fiscal year 2020. And of that, 27 million of it was sole source, and 8 million of that was competitive, and they could be performing that work anywhere. So what are the stages of the 8A program? We have a developmental stage. As it is, it's a 9-year program. So the first 4 years are considered the developmental stage. And during this stage, you can receive relatively unrestricted sole source 8A income. And they do have a cap, but that cap is like 100 million. So by the time you've done that, you're really not small anymore by any industry standards. So basically during your first 4 years, you can get unrestricted sole source income. Now that doesn't sound bad or impossible, but you have to be very careful here. Because when you go into the program, all of your income is non-8A. So imagining 8A income taking over all your income it's really hard to imagine. But if your company is really good, that can happen. And what happens is when you get to the transitional stage of the program, which is the last 5 years, you start being, business activity targets become imposed. They start being imposed. And the first year, it's only 15%. 15% of non-8A income, where you're sitting right now as an uncertified firm. That sounds like nothing, because you have 100% of your income outside of the 8A program. And it increases by 10% each year. And you've got the 5 transitional years. Well, if you don't meet these business activity targets, you become placed on a sole source restriction. And you're not allowed to receive any sole source contracts until you rectify this situation. And that doesn't sound too bad, but that even includes sole source follow-on offers for work you're currently performing. So even when you enter the program, you need to keep your eye on that last 5 years and keep your income sources adjusted. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And the reason for these business activity targets is when you graduate from this program and your ability to achieve 8A contracts is gone, we want, the goal of the program is to extend and ensure the viability of the company. We don't want you to graduate from the 8A program and go out of business because your income source has been depleted. So once you're certified, you've got to maintain the certification. And so the owner has to remain socially and economically disadvantaged. The personal net worth requirements cannot be exceeded. The business has to continue to meet the ownership and control requirements. Ownership and control is huge. And often 8A companies get certified as an 8A, and then once they're certified, somebody wants to buy into their company. Well, that is a rigorous process. It's almost like repeating your 8A application. So, you really kind of want to be in the ownership arena that you are before you go in, because SBA has to pre-approve any change in your ownership structure, and it's quite a process. I can vouch for that. When you also go, you'll sign a participation agreement stating that you'll submit to annual reviews and supply financial information to us, and several other things, and you have to remain compliant with the terms of the participation agreement. Every year you'll be submitting a little annual financial review. Your business opportunity specialist will come and visit your company. There's many factors, that can affect eligibility, but these are the very basic and maintenance requirements that you really need to adhere to. The other factors, they can be unique to a firm, and they're just not frequently encountered. There is a mentor-protege benefit. We used to have an 8A mentor-protege program, but now that's been merged with the SBA's all-small mentor-protege program, and it's now just simply called SBA mentor-protege program. And the purpose of the program is to enhance the capabilities of the protege by assisting small business concerns with meeting established goals in its SBA-approved business plan. Well, what they're basically saying is if you and a larger business apply for a mentor-protege relationship, your mentor can assist you and you can contract together. See, when there's an affiliation exclusion, the SBA-approved mentor protege relationship allows the 8A company to receive assistance from the mentor while being excluded from the affiliation determination as a result of this assistance. Those of you that are not familiar with federal contracting, affiliation issues are huge. And what that means is you're doing business or receiving assistance from another entity to the extent you're determined to not be your own company, but to be one company, regardless of who owns what, essentially. So the typical forms of mentor-provided assistance is technical and management, financial. They're allowed to provide you financial assistance. Subcontracting, you can use them as a subcontractor, they can use you as a subcontractor. Trade educations and assistance performing prime contracts. So, you have a contract, when you have a contract that the capacity is over your individual company, you and your mentor can joint venture and compete on that requirement as an 8A company. And you're considered small, even if the mentor is a large business. And if most sole source requirements, by the time you choose a mentor and move forward with this, you should typically have the capacity to perform them. So all sole source requirements must be approved by a SBA. And one reason is there's no protest capacity in a sole source requirement. And the protest is what really polices joint ventures out in the contracting arena. So you have to have an identified sole source opportunity. Your company on its own cannot have the resources to perform the requirement. And if you do, you just go for the requirement as your company and subcontract work back to your mentor or do a teaming agreement. There are a lot of ways to skin a cat, but the SBA Mentor Protege program is really good for you, especially for large requirements and the fact that your mentor can be a large business. With an SBA approved mentor protege agreement, you can, I kind of just covered this slide, form a joint venture with a mentor to bid on 8A set-aside contracts. Though the mentor may be large, the joint venture will be considered a small business. So see, your mentor is getting access to not only 8A contracts, but small business contracts that as a large business, otherwise they could not be involved in at all. It provides that affiliation shield based on the assistance provided by the mentor. That is huge. That is huge. And if you apply for the program, you really need to hold your mentor to the grindstone and make sure they provide the assistance so that when the relationship is over, you come out the better for it. And, again, joint ventures used to negotiate for sole source 8A set-asides must be approved by the SBA. Now, the application. So you want to apply. Application is done on certify.sba.gov. There's a little "Am I eligible?" test. You want to get on that and go through the questions on that to ensure that you're eligible. In the knowledge base, there's an application checklist. You want to gather your supporting documentation. You want to review the quick start guide, and I noticed they even have videos on there on how to fill out the application. You want to ask questions. Actually, at any phase, ask questions. You need to be registered in the system for award management. Create your login for certify.sba.gov. Complete and submit the online 8A program application. Now, a little bit about the process. You'll submit the application. Then it will be screened by a screener. The screener is simply determining if your application is complete. If the application is incomplete, they will notify you of the missing documentation. You provide the missing documentation, and once the application is determined to be complete, that's when it's moved forward to a processor. And then the processor actually reviews the application and analyzes it. So you will probably also hear from a processor asking you for additional information because the screener is simply checking off boxes to make sure the application is complete. This is the certify webpage. Here's the am I eligible, where you take the little test. The help is where you get to the knowledge bank that has the user guides and document checklists. See, we've got the quick start guide. We've got new tips for success 8A initial application. Here's information on how to create your account. There's the document checklist down here. And here's a full walkthrough of the 8A application that you can watch. So the certify is where you apply, where you upload the documents, and the knowledge base during the application base process is truly your best friend. And I did review this. At first it's reviewed by a screener. The screener requests the missing or incomplete documentation. Once all the documentation is received, the application is assigned to a processor. Processor reviews and requests clarifying information. The information is received and the application is approved or denied. Now, what if you're denied? Being denied is not the worst of all worlds in the 8A application. It's actually an opportunity because you can see where your business is, where the deficiencies are. So once you're denied, you can submit a new application. You can make corrections or, a business decision to maybe pursue some subcontracting work on federal contracts. You can make a business decision, but in 90 days, you're allowed to reapply. 90 days after the date of the agency's final decision to decline, you can reapply. Now, if you've been declined 3 times within 18 months of the day of the first final agency decision, well, then you're going to have to wait a year. But that's still not bad. And don't be discouraged. There really is no perfect applicant. Every application is determined on a totality of circumstances. They're judiciously weighed in determining the applicant's eligibility. Here are some points of contact for the Wichita District Office if you have more questions about the 8A program or want to discuss your company in a little more detail. And this is a little scanner that you can explain how we are doing. And that's the end of my presentation. So
if anyone has questions for Teri, if you could type them in chat, she'll be able to take a look and respond. We'll give everybody just a minute to type here.
I'm trying to get back to Zoom, Marcia. I'm sorry. Your screen sharing is stop share. Okay, stop share. Now I'm back. I think I'm back. Yes, and I can see 4 messages. Jeez Louise, I keep getting out of Zoom. Boom. The only time you have to wait 12 months to reapply is if you've been declined 3 times within 180 days of the initial decline. Normally, it will just be a 90-day wait. But if you were declined 3 times within the 180-day period, then you will have to wait 12 months. But that's only after 3 strikes, you're out. Otherwise, it's just a 90-day wait from the initial decline. Well, what happened? This question is, what happens if you're in the 8A program and you are unable to meet one of the 3 economic disadvantage criteria? Well, that would be a case where we would send you for an eligibility review for people that review the eligibility on an ongoing basis, because we want to ensure that it is not just us seeing the economic disadvantage, but the individual. We have a team that all they do are eligibility reviews. So they are very good at checking your tax returns, checking the assets. So that would be the initial step. And if you were determined to have exceeded one of the economic disadvantage requirements, then I would be contacting you to see if you would like me to move forward with the termination and early graduation, or if you would simply voluntarily withdraw from the program because you're no longer eligible. So your question becomes then, well, what about my existing 8A contracts? You, by law, you are required to complete those contracts. And on the 350,000 income, total income averaged, say someone in your family passes away and leaves you $500,000 1 year. This is a one-time event. It was outside of your control. Well, then we would send it for the eligibility team, and they would most likely state, oh, this was out of the participant's control. It's a one-time event. They still remain eligible because it's not like, because of the situation. They, on that 350,000 total income, we have to have a little bit of flexibility there, because often life circumstances happen and you're bringing in 250,000 average a year, and somebody passes away, they could leave you 150,000 and you've exceeded. So that, again, we have to work with the eligibility review team, but they do this every day. So they know the parameters and things. So it's not an automatic kick out on that. Okay, could you go through some examples of people who successfully got the 8A contract who were not in the government recognized socially disadvantaged groups? Well, some woman-owned companies. I currently have a woman-owned company that's doing well, and she was able to demonstrate quite the case that her gender was a real detriment to her. There is, I can't name names, I'm not allowed to name names, but there is another participant. I assist more than the Wichita office, but I know of another participant that had a I guess you could only call it a disease that has caused some blindness, and that disease has caused him to be at a social disadvantage. Occasionally, service disabled veterans, they'll have wounds that you just can't ignore, and sometimes they're at a disadvantage in their industry by virtue of the service related disability. Those are really the main. You see a handicap, a disease, something that affects you, that when you go out in your industry, people are not working with you. Either they think you can't do it. You have to, because of the visible effects of whatever has happened to you, you have to send somebody else out to do your work, to be the face of the business. Situations like that. And those are looked at on a case-by-case basis. They like to hear the history. If you had a situation like that, I would like you to email me, because I will get the section of the regulation that applies to that, because they also look at it in terms of, denial to education and things like that, and possibly discuss your situation in a little detail. And I can't help you with the application because I'm responsible for the oversight, but I can at least give you a little more of an understanding. Just bear with me because I operate in more than one territory, but when it's something specific like that, I would like to have a conversation. I'm not seeing any more messages, Marcia.
All right, well, we can wrap this up. The voice that you're hearing is Marcia Stevens. I'm with the Kansas Small Business Development Center at Wichita State. We work very closely with Teri and with other folks at the SBA and with Kansas Procurement Technical Assistance Center to help people who are interested in government contracting. So if we can provide you with free one-on-one assistance as you're exploring your options for government contracting, we'd be happy to do that. Just give our office a call or get on our website and request advising.
Well, and another thing, I can't assist with the 8A application, but
Teri, I can still hear you. Are you?
oh, well, I couldn't hear you, so I didn't know if you were talking or not.
Oh, no. Okay. I do see one other question there. It says, if you are a 2020 new business without actual financial transactions until 2021,
I
what
wouldn't
document?
apply. I wouldn't apply. It's not for new businesses. You need to be in business 2 years. It's very rare for a business that has no financial transactions until 2021 to get applied. I would wait until I have contracts, tax returns, because the potential for success is huge. Just wait the 2 years. That is the best. That will save you a lot of frustration and a lot of back and forth, because it's the program is not for startup businesses. And I do know I referenced a waiver, but those waivers are very rare, very rare. Now, once you've got 2021 and you've got some transactions and are showing a profit, then give me a holler. Or we can have a discussion beforehand if you want to discuss your individual business. I never mind talking to people because, I could help you with information to get prepared for the application while you're getting some financial information that you'd be able to, submit with your application, because they will not accept an application without financial statements or tax returns. The 8A application process is almost a learning process, because it requires everyone to operate with financial statements, tax returns, and some generally, you have to have an operating agreement or bylaws and things such as that. But I'm always willing to have a conversation with a small business.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I think we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Teri, any final words?
Well, just as I said, that don't be discouraged. There's not a perfect applicant. I'm always willing to make time to have a conversation. I enjoy meeting with businesses. I do believe it's nice to have the conversation, because if you're not quite ready yet, we can kind of discuss, how to get ready and when to know to pull that trigger.
Great. Our state office is recording this webinar. I will send it out to everyone who's registered, hopefully later this week, along with an evaluation. I hope you will take just less than a minute to click on the link and give us an evaluation. And if you do have any questions, either for the Wichita State, Kansas SBDC, or for Teri, we'd be glad to work with you. With that, I'll go ahead and end the session. Thank you for participating.
Have a good day, everyone. Bye.